So we've covered most of Selenium IDE at this point. I just want to go over a couple of other things that we haven't touched on yet. So the first thing is breakpoints. So sometimes our test can be spinning by pretty fast and we might get an error on some verification or something's not quite working right. We can click on any one of these commands. We can right click here and we can say toggle breakpoint, and what will happen is when it gets to here, it's going to stop. It's just like using a debugger here. So if we were to run this test here, you can see that it opened up a new browser window here and it stopped right here where it had typed in this text. So this is pretty useful for debugging, for figuring out what's going on wrong with your test, and then you can obviously resume and you can set as many breakpoints as you want. So I'll go ahead and delete that breakpoint. Now another thing that we can do here is set our base URL. So right now it's set to google.com, and this is the base that's going to be used for our tests. We can change this. We can add a new base URL, and what this does is it makes it so that we can write our tests or we can record our tests so that it's not dependent on a particular URL. This is useful in cases where you might have perhaps a production and a staging and a QA environment, and they have different links here or different base URLs, but everything else should be the same. So you don't want to code that into your test, and this is a way to do that. And now the last thing we're going to look at here is the plugin architecture here. So if we go to our options, you can see that there's this plugins. And here we've got a couple of plugins by default. These are the formatters that let us export to the various languages. And there's actually quite a few more plugins. So if we go to that Selenium HQ site and we go to download here, you can see that if you scroll down just a little bit here, there's the Selenium IDE plugins, and you can see there's some pretty useful plugins here. One to do a screenshot on a failure, which could be very useful for testing, to check your favorites here to give you certain tests that are favorites. One that I really like is this one that highlights elements. So it highlights the elements that you're involving with your script. So for example, if you select text box, it highlights that so you can tell what elements are being manipulated by the test. But there's definitely quite a few plugins here, and it's an extensible architecture. It basically uses JavaScript, so you could actually even write your own plugins and extend the IDE.